Hey, it's Laura, and welcome to the 12 Projects of 2025. I'm not calling it the 12 Projects of Christmas because the vast majority of them this time are not Christmas related, and people are watching them year round, so it always sounds kind of weird to say Projects of Christmas. So we're just calling it 12 Projects. They're also not going to be on an absolutely daily basis, but I'll have 12 of them done probably here in December before Christmas. I had myself all together a couple weeks ago, and then I didn't, just kind of fell apart. So anyway, I've had blown a knee out, broken a tooth. There's just been a lot going on. So this first project, I'm going to show you something that this absolutely was a gut punch when I realized how long ago I used to do this class. I used to do this one back in the mid-90s. 30 years ago. Oh my goodness. Since I'm only 32 now, gosh, I was a mere baby when I taught this. This is a class that I used to teach in multiple quilt shops in the Seattle area back in the mid-90s and into the early 2000s. It was a super popular class, and it was lots of fun to do. It's a great way to use up just little bits and pieces of fabric scraps, and it was called Itsy Bitsy Quilt Cards. Now, I have some samples that I can show you from in the way back. So these are all now considered vintage because they're over 25 years old. Now, one of these I use, this is oh, my brain. I hate menopause. I hate it because my brain just kind of just says, yeah, no, I'm not going to work any longer. But this journal, here we go. This is a journal page from 2021 where I had used one of these cards from so long ago. So there's an example of where I have one. And they're all like 3" by 4". Here's also something that I've hanging up in my studio. It's more of an Asian-inspired one. And then I've got all of these from the way back. As I said, I taught this class at least twice a year in 4 or 5 shops. And what's really sad is none of those shops exist any longer. So anyway, but they're just itsy bitsy quilts, and they qualify as a quilt because a quilt has 2 layers of fabric and something as a batting in between, and that's what constitutes a quilt. So these all do. They're also bound in various ways. A lot of these were Christmas oriented, probably because I did a lot of them during the holiday seasons. And they have stitching on them. Now, this was all machine stitching because I was teaching these in quilt stores and stuff. But they could also be hand stitched. It's kind of on a tree theme there, wasn't I? But I look at these and I go, yeah, these still look like me. Now, some of these have been pinned onto board so many times that they really should be on different cards. But you can do any kind of stitching, any kind of images. Here's a little snowman. This could be, birthday, Christmas, whatever. It's just a present. Here, I've cut a butterfly out of some fabric, and I used a metallic thread to give it some sparkle. Here's an ornament and some holly. This one is more of an autumn theme with the pumpkin. A lot of these are Christmas. Some candles and a star, and then use sentiments on this. This is long before I ever started doing paper. And then here's some that are still, this is just all layered up together, but these had some different, they weren't just all Christmas. But you can see, so it has the main layer, the batting, and a backing. Here's a ladybug. And this one I have for something that I'm going to be talking about. And here, again, I've cut out a little angel that was on the fabric and then layered it with some other fabrics. A star. And an easy way to do a star is I cut little triangular pieces. And instead of trying to cut the whole star, you just cut the triangular pieces, and then you lay them to where they're touching or overlapping at those corners. Easy way to do a kind of funky star. You can do, here's a heart. And this one, the background's kind of layered up. Let's tweak that. I just find it's interesting. These all still look totally like my style. So I think I've grown and changed so much. And then, you know, you get humbled and you get back to reality. Again, cutting out, these are some leaves I cut out from this fabric, or the background has the leaves. This is a leaf I've cut out and a little lion that I cut out. Here's just taking little geometric pieces to make a dragonfly. And I'm going to set this one aside because it has some binding stuff on it. So on how to make these, it's really quite simple. As I said, you have well, let's actually use this one's better because it has all the pieces and parts. So you have a background fabric, whether it's a single piece or multiple pieces. You have a scrap of batting. This is what is called warm and natural. It's almost like a felt, and you can use felt if you don't have quilt batting. You can use a piece of felt because it just has that kind of almost texture as a piece of felt. And then a backing fabric. And you can layer that up. You can make it whatever size. This one's a little bit larger. This one's a little smaller. And you can just play with whatever size that you want to do. And then it's up to you as to how much you want to layer up on the background. So this one has this piece. This is a green check and some green dots. And then here I've taken and made some little flowers out of the fabric. And then, as you can see, they're all kind of stuck down. They're not actually, but they're not glued. I used on this something that is called fusible web. Now, I personally have always preferred, my preference is the Denison products, and they've been around forever. This bag here of this one, this has got to be 25 years old. Easily, this bag here. So they've changed their graphics slightly, but not a whole lot. And it's my personal preference. You can get it in these convenient 9x12 sheets. It also comes on a roll. You can also, there is multitude of different brands that are out there. Biggest thing when you are using a fusible product is to follow the instructions of how to use it. For instance, I'm using what is called Denison products, and they love having steam. And in fact, you steam them a lot to get the adhesive to adhere the best. There are other types of fusible products that want absolutely a dry iron, and with that, steam will make them kind of disappear. So you want to always use the manufacturer's instructions on how to fuse your things down. So actually there's some smaller pieces in this one. And I found, by doing my Rip Van Winkle thing away from quilting for several years, 15 years, the product that I have from way back still works just fine. So it doesn't deteriorate okay, I couldn't say that very well over time. Now, one of the things with this stuff is it has a tackiness. That's the one thing I will find as it gets older. It's less tacky, but it's slightly tacky. But you can see it's like a web of basically adhesive that then just gets melted on with an iron. You press it on. So for instance, with this cat, this was a bigger piece. I put the fusible onto the back of it, and then I cut it out after the fusible was on the back side. And it has a paper backing on it. So what I have done, so here's another one of these cats. See, it still has a paper backing on it. It's cut out. Then you can peel the paper off, and the fusible is on to the back side of this fabric. So then, for instance, like with this one, I've got this piece of green. And like I said, Or maybe I didn't. My brain doesn't always work. It's got a tackiness. See, so it's still got some tacky. So then I can stick it down. Okay, that's where I want it. This guy, again, it's tacky. So then I can place him where I want him. And then I have an iron off to the side here. It's always good to use a press cloth. Of course, that's not what I'm doing. So I'm just using a little iron. And now it's fused down. Now this isn't fully fused as it can be, but it's stuck down to where nothing's fallen off, and it is stuck down. If this were my final fuse of it, what I would do is using a press cloth, and I might use a damp press cloth because I'm using the Steam-A-Seam, which likes steam. I would use a damp press cloth and really give it a good steaming. If I were using a different brand, most of whom do not want steam, I would use a dry iron and do it for the amount of time. Now, the reason I like the Steam-A-Seam, and I'm not sponsored by Steam-A-Seam, never have been. So, this just happens to be personally my favorite type of fusible material, is you want to give it a lot of steam and heat. You will find less difficulties in terms of stitching through it. Now, if you're hand stitching through this stuff is not a pleasant experience because it does stiffen things and it makes it harder to stitch through. So if you're going to hand stitch this, I wouldn't even bother with fusing it. But if you're going to machine stitch it, the better it's steamed and melted in, the less issues you're going to have with stitching on it with your machine. I'm going to do after the first of the year, I'm going to do a whole series of about using fusible products on a quilt. And so when we get to that point, that'll be much more in depth. I'm just trying to keep this quick and fast without going into too much detail. So anyway, so you're going to fuse this down using your manufacturer's direction, no matter which product you are using. If you use too much heat on some products, it will also melt it away completely. So you want to make sure you're following your manufacturer's instructions. So anyway, once you've got it fused down, you're ready then to go to your sewing machine, and you can stitch as little or as not much that you want to. One of the things with fusing too, you wouldn't even have to stitch it. It is fused. It can go through the laundry, though I wouldn't be washing these little quilts because not really necessary. But once it's fused down, it's not going to go anywhere. And you don't even have to, if you don't want to, you don't even have to stitch. You could also use little paint along the edges, dimensional paint, that sort of thing. So beads, whatever. So you don't even have to stitch these. But at this point then, you can trim off, you can do your stitching that you want to do, trim off your edges, and then you're ready to bind it. Now, the majority of these little quilts, I have just, it's just folded over, raw edge folded over fabric that's, like 5/8 of an inch wide, maybe, that's folded over, and then I just stitched around it. Here I stitched around it. Here I stitched it down and then rolled it around to the back side. So it's got more of a folded edge there. Other ways that I have done these is here I've just taken some yarn or cord and I've zigzagged it onto the edge. Here it's done in white. Here it's done in black. And then what I would often do is it came to the corner of, well, let's do it here with this two black. And so my cording is stitched on, and then I would twist them together, and then I would zigzag stitch about 1/4 of an inch up, and then I would trim these off. So it makes little tassels like at the corners. So you can do that. You can just zigzag around the edges, or you can do like some of my, these are just from earlier this year. These are a little bit larger, but I'm very confident in my brain. These little tiny quilts that I've done recently were definitely inspired by these little quilts from 30 years ago. And here I've just done where I've just zigzag, I've done partial fold over, I've done all sorts of things on the edge. So same sort of thing here. Here I've just done just like I did on these guys, or I can just stitch close to the edge. Now that, back in the day, a clean edge was more the look. And nowadays, with mixed media and stuff, having, strings hanging off is kind of preferred. So you can do all sorts of stuff over the edge. Same sort of thing as I'm doing right now as I did 30 years ago. So, and you can add, just like I've done on these, some embroidery or stitching to them as well. And these are all over on my Instagram. When I did these guys, this was before, well, computers were around. I think we were still on AOL, and I know we were still on dial-up, and no social media existed yet. These were 10 years before YouTube. So that's why y'all have not seen any of this stuff, because all my quilting was before YouTube. So anyway, but these are fun to do. And again, here, as I was talking about, these are little flowers. I cut a circle, snipped out little corners to make little flowers, and then I can stick that all down and do some stitching on it. Then you just put them onto, whether you're using pre-made cards or using some of the cardstock you have and some stamps. You can put a sentiment on the outside, on the inside, and they make fun little cards to give away. Whether it's for a special, you can make these into little, gift card things. You can make these even smaller for gift tag things. Here's one where you can see I've just taken and tacked it down. I don't glue it down. I would just tack it down so that you can then take this off if you wanted to be able to use it for something else instead of a card. And this guy was a fun, cute guy to make. And there you go. So, Itsy Bitsy quilt cards. They're vintage now. But yeah, this is my supply list and description stuff for that. I was going to say I could put this up, but I'd have to scan it and put it up for you to download if you want to. Because one thing I do know, these were all on I have all my quilt stuff on disc because, the computers were around, but it's all on the little 3.5-inch compact disc thingies. I don't have a computer that'll read them any longer. And it was also on a computer program that I no longer use. So anyway, but scanners are a wonderful thing. But these are fun little things to do for just, to make something, a special card. If you wanted to put a gift card inside or something, you can do that. But it's Bitsy quilt cards. Thanks a bunch.